Shohei Ohtani finds himself embroiled in what might end up being a major gambling scandal involving his interpreter and $4.5 million in gambling losses, with a story that just ain't adding up and details that keep on changing. Right now, there's an illegal bookmaking operation going on in Southern California being investigated by the feds, and during that investigation, they found $4.5 million wired from Shohei Ohtani to this bookie, Matthew Boyer. They also found two $500,000 payments wired over the last couple years from the same banking information. Now, at the time of this investigation, ESPN was also writing an article on the situation, and that's when they sat down with someone from Ohtani's camp who explained the story. They said that his interpreter, Ippei Mitsuzara, had racked up $4.5 million in gambling losses, and that Ohtani was simply covering the losses for his friend. Mitsuzara himself sat down with ESPN and in great detail explained the story and said that Ohtani was very upset with him, that he never gambled, but that he was simply paying off his losses. That was Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, the entire story changed. Now Ohtani's camp was saying that Shohei was the victim of a massive theft and that his interpreter stole the money in order to pay off the bookie. Now, there's just a couple problems with that. Number one, this was footage of Ohtani and his interpreter, Mitsuhara, the same day that this story came out and then changed to him being a victim of massive theft. They are laughing it up. They're chit-chatting. They're smiling. Does that look like a guy who just stole nearly $5 million from you? I don't think so. And number two, as our boy Craig Carton, who's a recovering gambling addict who has intimate knowledge of situations like this, pointed out on his Twitter thread, how would Mitsuzara have accessed that money to pay off his bookie? It's not like he showed up with a duffel bag full of cash that he could have been stealing and skimming off the top. This was a $4.5 million wire directly from Ohtani's account to the bookie. In no world can you wire $4.5 million from someone's account without them signing off on it explicitly? I don't care how close you are with your interpreter. I don't care who has your information. There is no way any bank is sending $5 million without that person explicitly saying it's okay. Not your team, not your interpreter, not your lawyer, nobody. So it begs the question, what's really going on here? I think there's a multitude of options. What's most likely going on? The interpreter probably was gambling. Ohtani probably did pay off his losses before his camp realized that none of this looks good. Even if it's not Shohei gambling, fans and Major League Baseball are not going to like this guy being in debt to a bookie, shuffling around millions of dollars, whether he racked up the debt or not. I think as soon as Ohtani's camp put out the story, people started to speculate, people started to assume, people started to think things about Ohtani gambling. They needed to come up with a story to nip this in the bud and make him look like the victim. What if all those assumptions are true? What if Shohei Ohtani is a gambling addict? What if Shohei Ohtani did rack up $4.5 million in losses and it was time to pay that bookie? What if he was stupid enough to wire the money directly from his own account? What if those two $500,000 payments from the same banking information a couple years ago were also losses from his gambling? What if this man signed a massive contract and asked for all that money to be deferred because he knew he was incapable of controlling his own money? What if he knew it was time to get his big fat payday, but he was aware enough of his gambling problem and said, I'm going to send $750 million down the drain by tomorrow if I have access to that. Give me $2 million a year. I will dig myself out of this hole, but put that money away because I am not capable of controlling my own finances right now. What if that's the real story, and the Ohtani camp completely botched the PR and made up some story about the interpreter? Is it a little bit wacky? Yes, it is. Is it completely plausible when a guy sends $4.5 million from his account that it's his gambling losses? Absolutely. I think we're at the point where it's a 50-50 coin flip. The idea that the interpreter was gambling, got too deep in debt, and Ohtani needed to bail him out, and then his PR team needed to come up with some story making him the victim is just as plausible as a superstar athlete with access to a lot of money has a gambling problem. Now, on the one hand, Ohtani seems like he's completely buttoned up. He seems like a smart businessman. He seems like a smart family man. It seems like it's not his scene. However, Addiction does not look at that. Addiction does not care who you are, what your job is, or how good you are at baseball. Now, also, you would say that something like gambling would bring great shame to your family, and we know how the Japanese are about their family name and how important that is to them. That's also the same reason that maybe you would go to great lengths to cover it up, such as I'm the victim of a $5 million theft. Because honestly, I'm taking the tinfoil hat off now. What happens to the interpreter? It's one thing to fall on the grenade saying, no, that was my gambling losses. I'll fall on the sword for my buddy on that front. It's a whole other thing to fall on the grenade saying, I stole $5 million from you. Because that is grand larceny. That is illegal. That comes with repercussions and ramifications. So we really have to wait and see how this one shakes out. Because if there's no sort of charges pressed, if there's no sort of police activity, if nothing happens to Mitsuhara, I highly doubt he stole $5 million. On the other hand, maybe he is the ultimate fall guy and is truly willing to go down with the ship to get some of that deferred money for him and his family down the line when he gets out of the clink. Because all I know is that you can't go out publicly and say someone stole $5 million from me without some sort of public consequences. At the very least, the story seems fishy, and I think we're going to see more to this. I think the story's going to be an onion with multiple layers. I'm not saying that means he's gambling. I'm saying that there's more to the story than just my interpreter got caught up and I tried to help him. He's covering his losses, other losses. There's more at stake than we know because right now, none of this story adds up. The math ain't mathin'. Shohei Ohtani's trying to tie two granny knots with a loop, and it ain't happening.